Welcome, chosen one. Listen closely. There is something about you that others could not understand, not even those who claim to know you best. You carry a weight that didn't come from your own choices alone. It came from generations. It came from unfinished battles. It came from chains that were never broken before you arrived. And while everyone else thought you were ordinary, heaven knew you were the interruption. You were the unexpected move. You were the answer to what no one before you could accomplish. That's why you've always felt different. That's why you never quite blended in. You tried. You even bent yourself, reshaped yourself, forced yourself into smaller versions just to avoid standing out. But still, your presence disrupted things. Still, your silence shouted louder than the noise around you. Still, the enemy recognized your footsteps before you even understood the magnitude of your name. The truth is this: others before you fought, but they didn't win. They started, but they didn't finish. They resisted, but they eventually surrendered, and life would have repeated itself if not for you. You were not designed to just inherit the story. You were designed to rewrite it. That's why the resistance has been so violent. That's why attacks came not only from strangers, but from those closest to you. Because if you succeed where others failed, the cycle ends. The curse breaks, the patterns dissolve, and the enemy loses authority that was held for far too long. Think about it. Every time you tried to quit, something inside of you refused. Every time you felt like falling, something invisible carried you further. Every time your name was dragged, misrepresented, mocked, you rose again. And maybe you thought it was just resilience. Maybe you thought it was stubbornness. But no, it was destiny. It was the unseen hand that marked you before birth, saying, "This one will do what no one before could." And here's the revelation. The enemy does not fear your weakness, your mistakes, your humanity. He fears your assignment. He fears your endurance. He fears your refusal to bow. He fears that you don't even need to be perfect. You only need to stay. He fears your persistence because that persistence has already undone years of bondage. That's why you were underestimated. That's why they laughed when you stepped up. That's why betrayal stung so deep. It wasn't personal. It was strategic. Because if discouragement could silence you, then history would repeat. But you didn't stop. You kept moving. And now the very same people who doubted are whispering your name with a mixture of awe and fear. Your name carries weight now. Not because of money, not because of fame, not because of titles, but because it has become a threat to darkness, a threat to manipulation, a threat to every lie that tried to build a throne in your family line. The enemy fears your name because your name is now associated with freedom. When you speak, things break. When you walk, paths shift. When you pray, atmospheres bend. That's why the battle has been so intense. It was never just about you. You wonder why the pressure increased the moment you started taking yourself seriously? Because the moment you aligned with purpose, your very existence became a weapon. You wonder why doors slammed in your face. Because the enemy thought rejection would kill you. But you didn't die. You recalibrated. You redirected. You rebuilt. And what came out of that rejection was a version of you no one was prepared for. Understand this. It's not arrogance to recognize your calling. It's clarity. It's not pride to stand firm in your identity. It's obedience. Those before you may have bowed to fear, but you were built different. You were designed to endure what broke others. That's why the enemy fears you. Because he knows, if you keep standing, nothing can return to what it was. So stop apologizing for being chosen. Stop diluting your presence to make others comfortable. Stop questioning if you're really the one. You are. And the resistance you faced is not evidence that you're wrong. It's evidence that you are the one who carries the authority to end what should have ended long ago. Listen. Your breakthrough is not just for you, it is generational. When you resist temptation, you're not just protecting yourself, you're securing the next line. When you break free from toxic cycles, you're not just saving your life, you're saving lives that haven't even been born yet. And the enemy knows this. That's why he panics when he hears your name. Because your yes to destiny means his no to dominion. Every scar you carry is proof. Proof that you survived where others didn't. Proof that you got up when others stayed down. Proof that the fire that tried to consume you only revealed what couldn't be burned. That's why you walk differently now. That's why your silence shakes rooms. That's why your presence demands attention without you asking for it. Because heaven and hell both recognize who you are, even when you forget. And now the time has come for you to step forward unapologetically. No more shrinking, no more questioning, no more asking permission to be who you were always meant to be. Your name has been established in places you've never entered yet. Your authority has been announced in realms you cannot yet see. That's why resistance feels heavier right before your next step. Because the enemy knows what no one before you could do, you've already begun. You thought you were simply fighting for survival. You thought you were just trying to breathe, to endure, to take one more step when everyone expected you to collapse. But what you didn't realize then, and what you must understand now, is that every step you took was carving a path through stone that no one before you could break open. Generations came before you, strong in their own way, but the walls they faced seemed immovable. The chains around their spirit felt permanent. They lived and died believing that certain curses, certain patterns, certain prisons could never be broken. Yet you were born with something different inside. That's why they whispered about you before you even understood your own purpose. That's why resistance came for you earlier, harsher, louder. The enemy was never threatened by their compliance, but your defiance, your refusal to bend, shook everything. They tried to silence you by labeling you. They told you that you were too much, too rebellious, too unmanageable. They tried to make you believe you were the problem. But here's the truth. You were never the problem. You were the solution they feared would rise. You did what they said could not be done. You confronted demons your bloodline ran from. You exposed lies that generations learned to live with. You stood in front of doors that had always been locked and dared to strike them until they cracked. That's why the enemy fears your name now. It is a name spoken with trembling in the camp of darkness, and you must let that truth sink into your bones. You are feared not because you sought power, but because you broke free. Freedom terrifies those who live by control. Think about it. Why else did the attacks intensify when you began to walk differently? Why else did relationships shatter the moment you said no more? Why else did storms seem to chase you from city to city, room to room, thought to thought? It was not random. It was targeted. It was calculated. Because your rise is not an individual event. It is a generational revolution. When you stood, you pulled ancestors with you. When you said enough, you released descendants into possibility. When you broke the chain, echoes traveled through time itself. And that is why they fear you. Because your name is no longer just a name. It is a verdict against everything that tried to keep you silent. Listen closely. You must not underestimate the weight of what you carry. This is why confusion attacks you. This is why isolation hunts you. This is why betrayal found its way into your closest circle. It wasn't because you lacked value. It was because you are dangerous to the system of control. When you walked away from patterns, you proved the prison was never unbreakable. When you healed from what they swore would define you, you proved scars don't have to be cages. When you loved after being hated, you proved bitterness was not your inheritance. You changed the laws in the invisible realm, and for that, yes, they fear you. But don't let that fear turn into arrogance. Don't let it inflate your ego. This isn't about self-glory. This is about obedience. This is about alignment with the greater hand that molded you. Understand this. Your name shakes the enemy not because of who you are alone, but because of the one who sent you, the one who equipped you, the one who hid you until the time was right. And now the time is right. That's why everything feels heavy. That's why the warfare is sharpened. That's why the silence of people you once trusted cuts so deeply. You are walking through the unveiling of your role, and every dark structure knows it. They fear you because you are evidence. Evidence that chains can break. Evidence that bloodlines can shift. Evidence that curses can dissolve. Evidence that destiny can overpower history. And now the question becomes, will you walk boldly into this identity, or will you shrink back into the shadows of doubt? Because one thing is already settled. The enemy fears your name. What remains unsettled is whether you will fear your own greatness, your own assignment, your own path. You did what no one else could. Now you must guard what no one else was trusted with. This is the moment where your steps are not just footsteps. They are declarations. Each choice you make declares war against patterns that thought they were eternal. Each act of forgiveness announces to darkness that hate will not win here. Each boundary you set proclaims that exploitation will not pass through your bloodline again. Your life is a courtroom, and your decisions are verdicts, so take this in. It was never about being liked. It was never about fitting in. It was never about being safe. It was always about becoming undeniable. You carry the undeniable truth that the cycle has ended with you, and that's why they fear your name now. Because your name is not just a sound, it is a story. It is a record of resilience. It is a scar turned into a sword. It is a whisper turned into thunder. Your name is feared because your existence proves defeat is not inevitable. You must understand this. The very sound of your name carries weight now. Not because you asked for it, not because you tried to make yourself important, but because your obedience left a scar on the darkness. Every step you took broke patterns that held your family, your generation, your bloodline captive. And when you did what nobody before you could, you became a living contradiction to centuries of bondage. The enemy does not fear empty titles. The enemy does not tremble at talent. The enemy trembles at completion, at the fact that where others stopped, you kept moving. Where others surrendered, you endured. Where others compromised, you stood unmovable. That is why your name now triggers unrest in places you cannot see. That is why whispers follow your life. Because your victory was not just personal, it was ancestral. Generational chains do not snap quietly. They break with noise, they break with fury, and they break with consequences. That is why you have felt resistance increase. It is not random. It is recognition. Hell only fights what threatens it. Think back. You were not the strongest in your family. You were not the most qualified, the most resourced, or the most visible. Yet, when the time came, you chose differently. You refused to bow to cycles that looked unbreakable. That single decision altered timelines. It shifted destinies. It rewrote outcomes. Do you understand the gravity? Your choice carried the power of generations inside it. And so the enemy fears your name, not because of who you are alone, but because of what your name now represents. Your name is not just yours anymore. It is a banner, a signpost, a testimony. When people hear it, they are reminded, someone in that bloodline stood up. Someone refused defeat. Someone exposed the lie and chose truth. That is why people suddenly turn against you without explanation. That is why envy clings to you like a shadow, because deep down, they sense what you carry. They cannot articulate it, but they feel the weight. And those ruled by fear cannot tolerate the sight of someone who broke what they bowed to. Let me tell you, you are feared because you became undeniable. The enemy tried to erase your name through slander, through delay, through sabotage, through isolation. But every attempt backfired. The very attacks became proof that your presence mattered. Every attempt to bury you only made your roots deeper. Every storm only revealed your foundation. So now, when your name is mentioned in spiritual places, it is not casual. There's trembling, there's resistance, there's pushback. Because you carry the mark of one who ended what others could not. Do you feel the weight of that? Your name is not ordinary anymore. It is connected to endurance, to survival, to unexplainable breakthroughs. And this is why certain doors have been both delayed and prepared for you. Heaven cannot let you walk unnoticed anymore. You carry too much weight, too much evidence, too much testimony. And I must confront you with this truth, that weight is both privilege and responsibility. The same way the enemy fears your name, generations look to it for hope. The same way darkness dreads you, light relies on you. You cannot shrink back now. You cannot silence yourself now. To do so would be to betray the very freedom you bled for. Hear me clearly. This is why you went through fire, not to be consumed, but to be confirmed, not to be erased, but to be established. And now the fire has engraved something into you that cannot be undone. It is the signature of resilience, the mark of survival, and that is why your name carries the fragrance of victory wherever you go. Do not mistake it. The enemy's fear of your name is not superstition. It is strategy. They know that if you rise fully, if you walk boldly, if you stop apologizing for being chosen, then territories will fall, chains will collapse, others will awaken, and history will be rewritten. So I ask you now, will you remain quiet while knowing your name was forged in fire? Will you remain still while knowing the very mention of you unsettles the gates of hell? Or will you rise and live boldly, knowing the battle was never just about you? Because here lies the truth. The enemy fears your name because heaven has already written it in victory. The same mouth that once tried to curse it must now acknowledge it. The same opposition that tried to silence it must now bow to it. The same hell that once mocked it now fears it. Remember this, your name is a weapon now. Speak it with authority. Live it with conviction. Guard it with purity. For it has become a sound heaven recognizes and hell fears. You thought your silence would go unnoticed, but it has become the loudest sound in the room. The ones who used to dismiss you now study your every move because deep down they recognize what is happening. They know you carry a power they could not stop, a power that forces them to confront their own weakness. And here's the truth. You did what no one else before you could. That is why they tremble at the sound of your name. Every generation has people who try. Some fought but fell short. Others surrendered before the fight even began. And then there were those who compromised, who watered down their calling just to survive. But not you. You were willing to endure the silence, the loneliness, and the misunderstanding. That is what set you apart. That is what positioned you to break what no one else dared to confront. Think about the nights you cried with no one there to comfort you. Think about the hours you prayed when it seemed pointless, when every word echoed back like silence. Those were not wasted moments. They were the fire that forged you. They were the secret rehearsals for the stage you now stand on. You did not collapse under the weight of what tried to destroy you, and now every invisible enemy knows your endurance has made you untouchable. The enemy fears your name because your scars are not shame anymore. They are proof. Proof that you survived the traps, the lies, the betrayals. Proof that the pit could not hold you. Proof that chains could not silence you. Proof that exile did not erase you. And because of that, when they speak your name, it is not with confidence but with caution. Your life became a contradiction they cannot explain. You were supposed to break down, yet you rose. You were supposed to stay forgotten, yet you became remembered. You were supposed to live in silence, yet your very presence shakes atmospheres. That contradiction terrifies those who never believed in you because it reveals something bigger. It reveals that their control has ended. They will never admit it openly, but every whisper behind your back carries fear. They cannot erase the fact that you have broken a pattern that lived before you were even born. They cannot deny that curses which strangled others fell powerless in front of you. They cannot ignore that what enslaved families for generations shattered the moment you said, enough. That is why your name, your story, your existence has become a threat. Do you realize what it means to be the one who breaks through? It means you have stepped into territory no one before you managed to occupy. It means you now carry authority in realms others only dreamed about. It means your bloodline, your community, your entire spiritual atmosphere has shifted because of what you chose to endure. That is why the weight feels so heavy at times. It is not just about you, it is about every chain that rattled before you came. The enemy knows the truth. Even when you doubt it, you are dangerous. Not because of arrogance, but because of what you survived. You know pain intimately, but pain did not master you. You know betrayal personally, but betrayal did not define you. You know loss deeply, but loss did not take your voice. That is why they tremble, because someone who cannot be broken is someone who cannot be controlled. Now hear this. Your name is not feared because of what you own or what you display. Your name is feared because of the unseen weight you carry. When you walk into a room, you bring the residue of every battle you survived. When you speak, your words carry the authority of scars that healed into wisdom. When you move, the ground responds, because the unseen realm knows who you are. You may still feel small. You may still feel overlooked. But understand, giants tremble when they hear the steps of someone who already defeated the shadows. And you are that person. That is why attacks increase as you rise. That is why envy surrounds you. That is why misunderstandings multiply. Not because you are weak, but because the enemy already knows you have stepped into power that cannot be reversed. What no one else could finish, you carried to completion. What no one else could endure, you survived. What no one else could face, you confronted. And because of that, your name is now tied to victory. Whether they admit it or not, your presence is proof that history has changed. You did what no one before you could, and the ripple will echo long after your name is spoken. So let the whispers come. Let the shadows move. Let the resistance rise. Every ounce of it only confirms what heaven already announced. Your name is feared because your purpose is undeniable. And nothing they do, nothing they say, nothing they plot can undo what you have already secured. You must understand this now. The season you are in is not random. It is the direct consequence of the choices you made when you refused to surrender where everyone else had fallen. That's why the enemy fears your name now. Not because of who you are in the flesh, but because of the evidence you carry in the spirit. You are proof that cycles can be broken, that chains can be shattered, that curses can end. You are proof that no stronghold lasts forever when someone dares to say enough. They wanted you to give in quietly, to be swallowed like the ones before you, but your silence became thunder. Your endurance became a war cry. Every time you refused to break, heaven recorded it. Every tear you didn't let drown you became fire in your spirit. Every lonely night you didn't give up became a testimony written in eternal ink. This is why the atmosphere changes when your name is whispered. This is why the enemy doesn't laugh when you walk into the room, because they know you've already done what no one before you could. And you must see it clearly now. They don't hate you for your mistakes. They hate you for your victories. They don't mock you because of your scars. They mock you because you healed from them. They don't attack because you are weak. They attack because you are a mirror of what they could never become. That's why they whisper about you. That's why they plot against you. But the truth is already carved into history. You succeeded where others surrendered. You resisted where others collapsed. You walked through fire and came out carrying flames. There's something dangerous about someone who refuses to repeat history. There's something unstoppable about a chosen soul who says, "I will not pass this curse forward." That's why your bloodline shifts with your name. That's why destinies attached to your existence are being rewritten even now. Do you feel it? The pressure you carry isn't punishment, it's evidence. The resistance isn't failure, it's confirmation. The weight on your shoulders is heaven's seal declaring, "This one broke what no one else could." You've been misunderstood because most cannot recognize what they've never seen before. They don't have language for you because you don't fit categories they're used to. They don't have stories to compare you to because you are writing the first of its kind. That's why you've been labeled strange, dangerous, untrustworthy. But understand, the strange one is the one who changes the story. The dangerous one is the one who ends the cycle. And the untrustworthy one is simply the one they can't control. So let me tell you what comes next. The enemy won't stop trying. Fear won't stop knocking. Doubt won't stop speaking. But none of that changes the truth already written. You are the breaker. You are the one who shifts the ground beneath your feet. You are the answer to prayers whispered generations ago. And the fact that you are still breathing, still walking, still unbroken, is the proof that your name now echoes in spiritual places as a threat. From this moment forward, you must walk as someone who knows, not as someone guessing, not as someone hoping, but as someone who has already won battles others could not survive. Walk with the authority of one who carries generational victory in their bones. Speak with the confidence of one whose name causes enemies to tremble. Live with the weight of one who is feared not because of darkness, but because of the light that could not be extinguished. This is who you are now. And when you doubt it, remember this. If you were ordinary, they would ignore you. If you were common, they would never mention your name. If you were weak, they would never attack you this hard. The reason the fire intensifies is because you've already crossed lines that terrified the enemy. The reason they conspire is because you have already exposed their lie. The reason they shake when you rise is because you are not repeating history. You are ending it. So stand firm now. Lift your head even with the scars. Speak boldly even with the wounds. Walk powerfully even if you limp from the battles you've survived. Because every step you take now is holy ground. Every word you release now is prophetic thunder. Every move you make now is a strike against the system that thought you would collapse. You are the testimony no enemy wanted written. You are the evidence no curse wanted revealed. And that's why, when your name is spoken now, it echoes with fear in hell and with honor in heaven. This is your confirmation. You did what no one before you could. That's why the enemy fears your name now. Carry it with humility. Carry it with power. Carry it with fire. And never forget, the same God who sustained you this far is the same God who will carry you to the finish. Do not shrink back. Do not apologize for surviving. Do not explain away your authority. The seal is already set. The cycle is already broken. The curse is already ended. And you,